of the Secretary General of the United Nations for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura. The European Union delegation to Algeria and the World Food Programme have held Algeria's role in meeting the needs of Sahrawi refugees in the Tindouf camps. And as the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry concluded that the Israeli occupying forces committed 4 of the 5 acts of genocide, more than 20 international aid agencies are calling for immediate intervention to halt the Israeli occupation's genocidal war in the Gaza Strip. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Mariam Barshi, and joining me today, my colleague Ms. Sharfi. Hi, Ms. Hood.
Hello, Mariam.
The Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Hattaf, has received the personal envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations for Western Sahara, Mr. Staffan de Mistura, on an official visit to Algeria. The visit is part of the preparation for the Security Council meeting on the question of Western Sahara, scheduled for next October, during which the personal envoy is expected to present to the Council a report on his efforts to implement the mandate entrusted to him. The Minister of State reaffirmed Algeria's support for UN efforts to achieve a just solution in Western Sahara, ensuring the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination, stressing the UN's central role and the need for direct and conditional negotiations between Morocco and the Polisario Front. At the end, Mr. Hattaf reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to UN decolonization principles, highlighting the role of the United Nations mission for the referendum in Western Sahara, MINURSO's role in supporting decolonization in Western Sahara, the last colony in Africa. Here in Algiers, the European Union delegation to Algeria and the World Food Programme, WFP, have held Algeria's role in meeting the needs of Sahrawi refugees in the Tindouf camps. Jamal Selmani has more details in this report.
The representative and country director of World Food Programme in Algeria, Aline Roumange, said that Algeria has shown exemplary generosity for more than 50 years in welcoming Sahrawi refugees at an event aimed at reaffirming the EU delegation in Algeria's commitment to Sahrawi refugees by continuing its funding to the UN agency, emphasizing that 80% of Sahrawi refugees are entirely dependent on humanitarian aid. She also hailed the EU's unwavering support and commitment to the population, adding that their strong and reliable partnership provides the sustainable funding needed to deliver vital assistance while improving the efficiency of World Food Programme operations in the camps. The European Union ambassador to Algeria, Diego Meado Pascua, for his part, also emphasized Algeria's generosity towards Sahrawi refugees over the years, while pointed out that a few weeks ago the EU had transferred the European contribution of around €5 million for the second year of the multi-annual partnership to reiterate the Europeans' commitment to the Sahrawi people. Meanwhile, the European Association of Lawyers for Democracy and Human Rights in the World and the Collective of Sahrawi Human Rights Defenders in Western Sahara launched a joint petition calling on the EU and its member states to end their complicity in the illegal occupation of Western Sahara by Morocco. In their petition, the European lawyers pointed out that international law is unequivocal in stating that the Sahrawi people have the right to self-determination and sovereignty over their land and resources, adding that the time has come for Europe to stand alongside a free and self-determined Western Sahara. They therefore urged the EU and its member states to uphold international law by demanding a democratic solution based on a referendum, as guaranteed by the 1991 ceasefire agreement, and to reject Morocco's claims to sovereignty. In this context, ELDH and CODESA stressed the need to extend MINURSO's mandate to monitor human rights violations in the occupied territories and to condemn ongoing violations, demanding the release of Sahrawi prisoners, notably those from the Gdea Mizik group, as well as an investigation into Morocco's use of drones against civilians.
The Vice Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Mr. Munder Bouden, is taking part in his capacity as representative of the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Mr. Brahim Bouhali, in the proceedings of the 46th General Assembly of the Interparliamentary Assembly of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, which is taking place today in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. This session, whose work will continue until next Monday, is being held under the theme "The Parliament at the Forefront of Inclusive Growth" and will be devoted to the examination of issues related to sustainable growth, the exchange of best practices, and the strengthening of institutional capacities, as well as the development of interparliamentary legislative cooperation. The Director General of the Algerian Investment Promotion Agency, AIPA, Omar Rakesh, has received here in Algiers the Director of Invest in Denmark, Mrs. Vanessa Vega-Schans, from the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where they discussed business opportunities and investment support mechanisms in both countries. Over to you, Ms. Hood.
Held at the agency's headquarters, the meeting took place as part of a joint workshop on mechanisms for attracting foreign direct investment. On the occasion, the policies of both countries in terms of attracting foreign direct investment were presented, as well as the missions, mechanisms of action, and services offered by the organizations responsible for promoting investment, in addition to the advantages and investment opportunities available. The discussions also focused on the strategic vision for attracting foreign investments, the economic priorities that have been established, and the importance of providing effective support for investment by simplifying administrative procedures, developing digital services, and creating a favorable business climate. In this context, both parties stressed the importance of foreign direct investment in stimulating economic growth and creating jobs, highlighting the central role of economic diplomacy in this dynamic. At the end of the meeting, both parties agreed to set up a joint working tool between the AAPI and the organization Invest in Denmark to strengthen bilateral cooperation and share their respective experiences. Back to you, Miriam.
Moving into the situation in the Middle East, dozens of Palestinians have been killed throughout the Gaza Strip today as the Israeli occupying forces pursued its full-fledged ground invasion of its biggest city despite growing international condemnation. The dead include a child and his mother killed in an air attack on a residential apartment in the Shati refugee camp west of Gaza City. Residents say bombardments of Gaza City has ramped up dramatically with incessant explosions destroying dozens of homes and naval boats joining tanks and jets in the major assault. Jordan, Qatar, Canada, Britain and France have condemned the Israeli occupying forces' latest attack and aggression on Gaza City. More details in this report by Jamal Salmani.
The British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper called the attack barbaric, saying it will only increase the bloodshed and risk more innocent lives. She stressed the need for urgent action to stop the violence, protect civilians, ensure humanitarian aid access, and work towards a sustainable peace. The French Foreign Ministry highlighted the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, where residents are suffering from famine and lack of access to basic necessities. It called for an immediate lifting of restrictions on humanitarian aid and resumption of ceasefire negotiations. The EU Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas, warned that Israel's ground offensive in Gaza will worsen the already desperate situation and stated that the European Commission would present measures to pressure Israel to change course. Meanwhile, the Jordanian Foreign Ministry condemned the expansion of Israel's ground operation, calling it a violation of international law and warning that the escalation risks dragging the region into further violence. The ministry urged the international community to press the occupation to halt its aggression and allow humanitarian aid into Gaza. The state of Qatar condemned the large-scale ground operation launched by the Israeli occupation to control Gaza, considering it an extension of the genocidal war against the Palestinian people and a flagrant violation of international law. The Qatari Ministry of Foreign Affairs warned that the Israeli occupation seeks to undermine the chances of peace in the region through systematic plans that pose a threat to regional and international peace and security. The Canadian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for its part, described the new ground offensive launched by the occupation forces on Gaza City as horrific.
And a group of Arab states at the United Nations has condemned at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva with the greatest firmness the flagrant Zionist aggression that targeted the Qatari capital Doha, describing it as a heinous crime that history will remember and a serious violation of international law, the Charter of the United Nations and international customs. Over to you, Ms. Hood.
Speaking on behalf of the group during an emergency meeting of the UN Human Rights Council concerning the Zionist aggression against Qatar, the head of Algeria's permanent mission to the UN office in Geneva, Rachid Beladhan, affirmed that the aggression of the Zionist occupier against Doha constitutes a heinous crime and a serious violation of international law, adding to the heavy record of the Zionist entity burdened with crimes and abuses. Mr. Beladhan condemned the aggression, warned of regional instability, affirmed solidarity with Qatar, and urged immediate international action to uphold law and UN principles.
تدين المجموعة العربية بأشد العبارات هذا الاعتداء السافر.
The Arab group strongly condemns this blatant aggression and warns against the consequences of this escalation, which will throw the region into a vortex of chaos and threaten its security and stability. The group expresses its deep concern over the targeting of mediating states striving for peace, a matter that undermines mediation efforts aimed at ending the bloodshed in Gaza and constitutes a flagrant violation of international charters and norms. The group affirms its full solidarity with the sister state of Qatar and its keenness to ensure its security and the safety of its citizens. The logic of war that the occupation seeks to impose in the region has been encouraged by its impunity for accountability. Accordingly, the Arab group calls on the international community to take urgent action to put an end to these violations and to impose respect for international law, the Charter of the United Nations and the resolutions of international legitimacy.
In the same regard, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, affirmed in Geneva that the Zionist strike carried out last Tuesday against Qatar constitutes a shocking violation of international law and a grave breach of Qatar's sovereignty, stressing it endangers peace efforts and mediation, and calling on the Council to ensure accountability and reaffirm the importance of peaceful conflict resolution.
Israel's strike on negotiators in Doha on the 9th of September was a shocking breach of international law, an assault on regional peace and stability, and a blow against the integrity of mediation and negotiating processes around the world. As such, I condemn it and call on this Council and on all governments to do the same. The Secretary General has pointed out that Israel's action was a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. The members of the Security Council also expressed their condemnation. The attack violated the right to life under international human rights law and the principles of international humanitarian law. Targeting parties engaged in internationally supported mediation on its territory undermines Qatar's key role as a facilitator and peace broker. It is an attack on global efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully. I urge this Council to reaffirm the central importance of mediation processes and to call for accountability for unlawful killings.
Let us recall that the emergency meeting requested by Pakistan on behalf of the OIC and Kuwait for the GCC is the 10th since the Council's creation and comes after the Zionist attack on Hamas leaders' residence in Doha, widely condemned as a reckless violation of Qatar's sovereignty, international law, and regional stability. Over to you, Miriam.
The European Commission, the European Union's main executive body, has presented a much anticipated and delayed proposal to suspend certain trade-related provisions of the association agreement between the EU and the Israeli entity in response to the latest attacks on the Gaza Strip. The sanctions, however, do not currently have enough support among the EU's 27 member countries to pass. The proposals announced on Wednesday also include suggested sanctions on extremist Israeli ministers and violent settlers, as well as on other parties. Kaja Kallas, the EU's foreign policy chief, urged the member nations to increase tariffs on some Israeli goods and impose sanctions on other Israeli settlers and 2 far-right members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet. The commission also said it was posing its bilateral support to Israel with the exception of support to civil society. The proposals follow a review of Israel's compliance with Article 2 of the agreement, which found that actions taken by the Israeli occupying government represent a breach of essential elements relating to respect for human rights. And the Jerusalem governorate said that the Israeli occupation continued intensification of military checkpoints and iron gates surrounding Jerusalem and its suburbs is part of a systematic policy aimed at isolating the city from its Palestinian surroundings and subjecting its residents to a repressive regime of discrimination and segregation. The latest of these barriers was set up in the village and towns of Muhmas, Arram and Edzeriya in the past 3 days. The governorate cited recent figures from the Colonization and War Resistance Commission, showing that by mid-2025, Israel has established around 904 fixed checkpoints across the West Bank. And now a reminder of today's top stories. For you in the efforts to achieve a just solution in Western Sahara's diplomacy chief Ahmed Hattaf met the personal envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations for Western Sahara, Staffan de Mistura. The European Union delegation to Algeria and the World Food Programme have hailed Algeria's role in meeting the needs of Sahrawi refugees in the Tindouf camps. And as the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry concluded that the Israeli occupying forces committed 4 of the 5 acts of genocide, more than 20 international aid agencies are calling for immediate intervention to halt the Israeli occupation's genocidal war in the Gaza Strip. That's it for today's news bulletin. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.